Here's a look at the newest presidential view from an expanding Myrtle Beach skyline. Stay tuned. Carolina People's coming up next. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're in the presidential suite, the top floor of the new Radisson Plaza Hotel, Myrtle Beach Convention Center. We're focused on the construction and development of the hotel and some incredible events that will soon happen here at the hotel. And we're visiting with Tom Leath, the city manager of the city of Myrtle Beach. Good morning, Tom. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Incredible opportunity to highlight the city's role in developing the new Convention Center Hotel, bringing the Radisson in and having Michael Pointer later in the week to talk about much of what's going to be happening here this week with the opening upon us. A really exciting week to kick off, and couldn't think of anyone better than yourself when I called Mark Crua to talk about who best could represent the city. Couldn't think of anyone better than yourself and Stephen Usry. So
we're really proud to be here. It's an exciting project.
Absolutely. Can we talk real quick about yourself? Were you originally from the area?
I was born in Spartanburg, grew up in Charlotte, moved to the beach full-time in 1985.
And you went to school in South Carolina?
I did, the University of South Carolina.
Great. Did you study originally becoming, what's that like, going to school and then later becoming a city manager? Do you actually go to school for that?
Most city managers have masters in public administration degrees. Years ago it was engineering. Last 15 years or so it's been cheating towards the public administration side. So I have a history undergraduate degree, a law degree, and a master's in public administration.
Is that right? Is that pretty common in city managers to actually have a law degree as well?
No, that's not very common. There are probably a couple dozen managers around the country who are also lawyers.
And when did you move to Myrtle Beach?
1985.
Is that right?
We spent summers here, obviously. Growing up in Charlotte, we spent our summers here, but moved here full-time in 85.
And when you moved here in 85, did you immediately become city manager, or did you work in some other positions within the city?
I worked as the assistant city attorney for a year, the assistant city manager for a year, and then was named city manager in 87.
Can you tell the viewers real quick about your responsibilities in this position? The bulk of our viewers are in the PD and in southeastern North Carolina, Robinson and Scotland County. I'm sure there's a lot of city managers within the 8 counties that we serve principally. But what are the primary responsibilities as city manager?
The city manager is sort of the chief executive officer of the corporation, of the city corporation. I'm hired by city council, and then my job is to hire the other employees of the city to provide the budget to city council for approval and then guide the city in furtherance of that budget.
Okay. And the budgets are done up each year?
Each year.
How was the Convention Center Hotel planned into a budget? Is that something that had been conceptualized a long time ago and then wrapped in, or is that done separately?
Well, it was conceptualized a long time ago. The hotel is actually owned by a corporation that is a closely held corporation of the city. So in essence, the city owns the hotel. We began looking at a hotel back in the late 80s, early 90s, when we were looking to expand the convention center. We had about 40,000 square foot facility. We wanted to expand it by adding about 100,000 square feet. And having an on-site hotel was a part of that discussion. The feasibility consultants came in and said, if you build this 100,000 square feet of expansion, you really need to have an on-site hotel in order to draw the maximum amount of conventions to the area. And so when City Council voted to expand in the early 90s, their thought was they would expand, have a hotel, and then expand again. And so we were sort of in that second stage of the 3-phase plan that City Council had.
Great. And so there are more expansion plans ahead for the convention center, or is that, or have we pretty much maxed that space?
No, we're studying the feasibility of adding another 150,000 square feet on the existing facility. We're also studying the feasibility of possibly going across the street and utilizing the mall property. Once that mall closes down, there may be some possibilities to expand there as opposed to being on site.
How does the convention visitor differ from other visitors to town? How did the feasibility studies gauge that?
There are a couple of key differences for conventioneers. Generally, they tend to come during the time of the year when you don't have the family vacationers and to a certain extent you don't have the golfing vacationers. So they really add to a time of the year when you need visitors. Secondly, conventioneers tend to spend more money when they're in town than family vacationers and even golfers.
That's a very good point. How about some of the, I'm sure the viewers would be interested in knowing there's so much that goes in. I know later in the week we'll have Wellbro in, and obviously the folks in Radisson, and then some of the big events coming up here. When you think about some roadblocks that occurred in helping to plan out, you said it was a heck of a long time ago that you began thinking of having a hotel here. Can you talk about some of the roadblocks that you encountered as getting to really to the point where we are today?
Well, it's a very complex deal that we put together, and there were a lot of players involved. Obviously, you had the city, you had the corporation that the city formed, you had the contractor, you had the project manager, you had the architect, you had Radisson, and so you had lots of contracts going back and forth, lots of negotiation between a lot of different parties, a lot of lawyers involved. I think at one time we had more lawyers than anybody else sitting in rooms and on telephones, and we literally for about a year had to go back and forth and work all of these deals out, and so that was the complication factor was a roadblock. Politically, there was a roadblock. There were people in town who very passionately felt that the city should not be in the hotel business. They felt it was unfair competition. There were also people around in the 90s when we were doing the convention center expansion who said we shouldn't do that either. But city council, looked at that and heard their arguments and finally decided, no, this is a thing that the city should do. It will not directly compete with the local hoteliers who are in place right now. It will help grow this business, and if we grow the business, then sort of everybody would benefit from that.
Absolutely. Any major convention that's in town, 404 rooms is not going to be enough to satisfy the entire convention.
Right. Well, the first weekend we're open, this coming weekend, we have a group, the Amway group. It's about 3,000 room nights. 800 room nights from that will stay in this hotel. The rest will spill over into other hotels. So there's an immediate spillover impact the first weekend we're open.
And you don't think we could have gotten that event had we not had the opportunity to have the Convention Center Hotel here on site?
There are a lot of groups that we're missing out on, or were missing out on, that we hope now to capture without this hotel on site. For two reasons. One, the conventioneers a lot of conventioneers like to stay near the convention. More importantly, the meeting planners and those who work the trade shows and conventions need to stay right next to the convention center because they're going back and forth to the floor a lot. The normal conventioneer can come over in the morning on a shuttle, spend the day at the show or the meetings or what have you, and shuttle back. If you're working the show or you're a meeting planner working the show, you're constantly up and down to your hotel room to the floor, and so they really want that on-site hotel. Obviously, the meeting planners drive where meetings take place,
right.
And so we were losing out on some of that.
That is a great point. I hadn't thought about that need for them to be right on site. I know in trying to help prepare for the Heart Ball, which will be here on the 22nd,
right.
As an active Heart Board member, trying to be around that day as you're setting up auction items, not only the day of, but the day before, getting all those auction items spread throughout the hotel, making sure there's good security, monitoring all those auction items, making sure everything's done. The desire to be here in the hotel is a heck of a lot, is really on the forefront of your mind, like any other event. So that's exciting. That will make a big difference. When we think about your own experiences as city manager and having to be, I guess, a level of a liaison between city council and the hotel, obviously Stephen's coming in a second to talk about that as well. But can we talk about some of the thrills for you in seeing this back in the late 80s and early 90s, thinking about project feasibility? Can you talk about the thrill of seeing this to fruition, to seeing this week actually occur? Some of the dignitaries will be in town later this week to celebrate.
Thinking back in the late 80s when we were trying to put the original expansion together, and then having City Council vote to go forward and having sort of a three-phase plan in place to be able to see the second phase of that come to life is awfully exciting. In my business, just being around long enough to see the second phase come to life is pretty exciting. And hopefully we'll be around to see the third phase, the final expansion. On a personal level, it's been a real thrill to work with the people who've been involved in this project. And Steve Usry is going to come in tomorrow, I think, and as project manager, he's worked on this project. He's worked on the original expansion. Just real professional people, committed to get the job done, and committed to get value for the money spent. If you look at the money we spent on the expansion of the convention center and the value that we got in return for that, same with the hotel. If you look at other cities and the kind of money they're spending on centers and hotels, it really drives home that we are really getting value for our money, and we couldn't do that if we didn't have just an excellent team in place. And that's been a real thrill to be able to work with those guys.
Absolutely. And who will be overseeing the Convention Center Hotel, and how will those operations be overseen?
The hotel generally will be overseen by the Hotel Corporation, and then the Hotel Corporation has in turn hired Radisson to actually manage the day-to-day hotel function.
Okay. How do you think this will impact the future of the Myrtle Beach area district, right around here and throughout this area?
Well, I think we may have talked earlier about raising the bar, and the original expansion, I think, raised the bar. I think this hotel raises the bar. We've already seen hotels in this area upgrade, and we think, quite honestly, a lot of that was due to the fact this hotel was going in and was going to raise that bar. Mm-hmm. The public infrastructure around the hotel has been upgraded. Power lines have been buried. We're down Ocean Boulevard doing a planned unit development in terms of public infrastructure there, burying power lines, new sidewalks. So generally this whole area around the hotel has been upgraded, and the buildings, the private sector is upgrading, and so it really is raising the bar locally right around the hotel, and I think throughout the city is going to raise the bar.
Mm. Tom, when you were in Columbia and attending first college and then law school and then later getting your master's in public administration, did you ever think you'd be at this point in your life as city manager of a prominent southeastern city and the activities involved and seeing something like this come to fruition? How does that make you feel 20 years later? Yeah.
Makes me feel old.
Oh, God, makes him feel old. Makes him feel old.
Well, I never really had and I guess I don't have a plan now, a sort of master plan for my life. I went to college and then went to law school, and during law school started taking graduate courses and worked for the state for a couple of years, and then went down and practiced law in Bennettsville for 5 years and sort of made it to the coast. But that wasn't by some grand design or plan. It's just what looked good at the time, and I sort of off I went. So.
And if you weren't currently the city manager for the city of Myrtle Beach, what do you think you'd be doing?
Practicing law, I guess.
Practicing law. That's a great commitment. Tom Leath, the city manager here, the city of Myrtle Beach, instrumental in helping to make the Radisson Plaza Hotel, Myrtle Beach Convention Center a reality. Tom, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. Good morning. Welcome back to Carolina People. This morning we're on the top floor of the Radisson Plaza Hotel, Myrtle Beach Convention Center. We're focused on this week's opening of the hotel, and we're visiting with Stephen Usry, an architect with Usry Wolf Cole Architecture. Good morning, Stephen. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you.
Incredible opportunity to highlight this week's opening. This Thursday, the Plaza Hotel will be opening, and heck of a lot of dignitaries coming in, I guess, from all over the state, all over the region. to celebrate what's been an amazing task, and the goals leading up to this point were immense. But thanks to the works of folks like yourself, it's really come off well. Can we talk real quick about yourself? Are you originally from the area?
I am from the PD, called Florence home. My mother and several sisters still live there. But moved to Myrtle Beach in 1977 as a newly married couple. And so, in a sense, we consider ourselves natives now.
Did you go to school here at the beach?
I did not. I went to Clemson for my college education.
Right. What was your first job after graduation?
I worked for a firm in Florence for about a year. I had worked with this same firm during my time in college, so went home, got married, did a little training, passed my exam, got licensed, and moved to the beach.
That's great. And you said 77 you moved
1977.
here. How quickly were you able to establish your architectural practice when you got here?
Well, at the time, it seemed to be slow. And over a couple of years, developed a little bit of a relationship with a couple of clients, met a couple of other architects in town. We joined up together and started a six-man firm in the late 70s, and through the 80s grew it up to about 25 people. And then in the late 80s started another firm, the current firm that I have now. So.
In the late 80s. And what kind of projects were you working on at that early stage, that the firm that grew to 6 and then 6 to 25? What kind of projects were y'all involved in?
We did a little bit of everything. We did a lot of resort work, commercial work that was located here in the area. We also cultivated relationship on institutional level. We did prisons. We did courtrooms. We did schools. Really in a more regional practice. We worked in several states at that time.
Is that right? And as obviously someone who's monitored the growth on the Strand, being a PD native and being down here 25 years, seeing the growth on the Strand, can you give the viewers a sense of what it was like comparing some of that early growth in the late 70s and early 80s to some of the growth occurring in a new century?
Okay. Well, the most significant thing was when we arrived to 501 and came up on the bypass. It only went one way in those days, and that was north. There was no way to go to Myrtle's Inlet unless you went downtown and took a right. So that was, and it was all woods. It was a forest out there. And you didn't feel as though you had arrived in Myrtle Beach until you actually got 2-3 blocks away from Kings Highway. So that was probably the most significant thing. There was very little off-beach development of any kind. It was hard to find a place to live. Most people lived somewhere, Conway, a number of other places. So moving here was a young man's activity.
But you were married at the time.
Yes, I was. And my wife was still in school. She went to Coastal, at that time an affiliate of the University of South Carolina, and so I was working. She was a full-time student.
That's great. Can you tell the viewers real quick about your first involvement with the convention center?
In the late 80s, our firm was working on some conceptual designs for the property to show the city how they could expand their convention center. There were issues about land. They had to acquire additional land. They had to think long-term about not just the hotel, the convention center, but the hotel and other issues that would come up once this plan was implemented. So we began as a conceptual architect for that project. Then as it became more of a reality, council chose to go and design-build delivery method, which removed us from our design role, but we were asked to manage the project for them, the acquisition of construction and design services, and then all the way through the entire completion of the project, which opened in 1994.
And your primary role in that first expansion was in an oversight capacity.
Yes, it was. I managed the selection process in which they chose the design build group, helped evaluate the designs because they They were given certain parameters that they had to meet, but at the same time, we wanted to take advantage of the talents that each team had with them. And really, the design solution that is here and in place was the idea of a New York architect. Was really beyond what we thought it could be. So,
obviously, for the city thought long and hard before deciding upon you and the firm as the project manager, or you as the project manager for the city and overseeing the build out of the Convention Center Hotel. Had you worked on any other projects as project manager for the city?
Yes, we did. In the mid-90s, Myrtle Beach decided that it wanted to have a baseball stadium, minor league affiliation here. And as that project came to fruition, they hired a company that had the franchise to do everything, both design, construction, and the entire facility. They asked us if we would not assist them again to monitor the development of the entire project. So we worked with the architects when they first began, the construction contractor, all of these folks working for the developer, in this case Capital Broadcasting.
Right, sure.
And we worked with the city, the county, and the developer to see that all of these parts and pieces came together and that the city achieved what its goal was in minor league baseball, another element of entertainment for our community.
Absolutely.
So.
And obviously your track record, and if you were hired by the city to oversee Capital Broadcasting, that's a pretty good track record to work with.
Well, yeah, we think so.
Very definitely. Lord, when we think about as a Durham native and obviously knowing familiarly very well the Durham Bulls ballpark there in Durham, and Jim Goodman and Capital Broadcasting's involvement with WRAL and Fox 50 up there. They're a very progressive group and have thought long and hard about development. So that's great. A great honor to have been hired to oversee what they were doing. And that led, obviously, to the city hiring you as the project manager for this site. What was that like?
Well, this in progression, this is the largest project of the three by far. And it's the most complex. I think the city manager discussed all the players that are involved in it, and the time that it took for this thing to come about, the financial intricacies, if you will, of setting up nonprofit corporations and borrowing money on the national bond markets and so forth. So. It was a much more difficult project to get up and running.
Right.
But during that time period, we had the opportunity to work with a selected architect, in this case Pegram Associates, to implement the plan. We went through a selection process to select the contractor on a partial set of documents to give us a guaranteed price and a delivery schedule based upon somewhat incomplete information, all of which had to be in place before the financial package could be actually taken to the bond market. So it was a much more involved, much more intricate legal process.
Which had a little bit to do with why there were some small delays. When did the project actually begin?
Construction began June of 2001.
Right.
And has proceeded post-haste ever since. So we're at the conclusion of an 18-month process. There was at least a year in advance of that for all of these other issues to go through. We selected Wellbro in the fall of 2000. We selected Pegram in late spring, early summer of 2000. So those folks were all part of the planning process, if you will. And up until the bonds were actually offered and purchased, it could be go, it could be no go. So everyone was working together on the basis that we want to bring this thing to fruition together.
Yes. So, Stephen, how frequently did you meet with the architect and the contractor?
We met, I would say, at a minimum in a formal fashion once a week. We met informally in the hallways in the conference rooms, wherever you might imagine, 3-4 times a week.
And what do you think impressed you most about their performance?
Well, I think they committed to the project from the get-go. They were willing to take the risk to be involved in a project of this magnitude and of this quality. And they always produced what they said they were going to produce.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's not the normal project for, at least for Myrtle Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Pegram's firm has done numbers of quality projects here, but none of this nature, none of this service-based concept. It's a very sophisticated hotel for our community. So the number one issue was their commitment and their willingness to follow through on that.
That's exciting. We've got about a minute. I wanted to see if you could share with the viewers some of the more memorable experiences, or any memorable experience that sticks out in your mind during the project.
Well, I think, in my mind, one of the most surprising and successful things that happened, and it happened spontaneously, was the opportunity to engage the local art community in providing art throughout the hotel, all the public spaces. Even in this nice room that we're in, there is some art that was produced locally. We went through a process of selecting. We had a tremendous turnout. I walked into the room and was shocked at how many folks had come to see what they could do to participate, and the quality is exceptional. And I'm just so pleased that it shows the commitment of Myrtle Beach to public art and their willingness to engage it. So I think that was a very memorable moment to me, and a surprising moment, but I think we're delighted with the results.
Stephen Usry, project manager, hired by the City of Myrtle Beach to oversee development of the Radisson Plaza Hotel, Myrtle Beach Convention Center. Stephen, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Craig. It's been a pleasure.
Stay tuned to more Carolina People coming up next. We want to thank the City of Myrtle Beach, Tom Leath, and Stephen Usry for making today's Carolina People such a great success.